money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change them. I never switched up. Been down since day one. Stay social. People change them. I never switched up.
How y'all doing this evening? My name is Marcus. My name is Kevin. Big O, get this thing out the way. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm Stefania.
That was the water bottle, ladies and gentlemen. Who else we got?
I'm Hashim, also known as Hashade.
Mike Carter, a.k.a. Mr. Carter, a.k.a. the Paperboy. Aloha.
Well, we have Stefania too, but she didn't say anything, so I don't know why.
I did.
Did y'all hear anything?
While you were moving your water bottle out of the way so that we didn't give any unsponsored advertisement to the maker of the water bottle.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we don't need the advertisement unless they want to pop on. That's fine.
So somebody heard me, right? You did hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so
Not always shady.
So tonight we do have a special guest. It's Representative Jason Crow, CD6. He's not on yet, but that's okay because we know that how busy folks are, particularly in the government in this particular point in time. So that's kind of where it's at. But nonetheless, we got things to talk about, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Some people look a little too hyped. All right, then shoot, let's go. So, we got our some of us got vaccinations, and let me tell you, it was the Moderna one.
Yeah.
And I was fine the first day. I was great. The next day, had a little soreness. Then on Tuesday, I was out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was at a board meeting. I was at the school board meeting, and I was struggling.
Yeah, you were.
Struggling. I was uninterested. I looked uninterested. I was interested, but I was struggling because I was fatigued. I was tired.
Hard to stay motivated.
Did any of y'all have that experience?
Well, I told you I got fatigued after, and I called you. I was like, are you tired?
See, I don't remember that. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's like you took a sleeping pill or something like that.
But
that is a symptom. A lot of people have complained about flu-like symptoms, chills, body aches. You can even have a fever. So those are part and parcel for getting the shot.
Kevin, did you have anything?
Absolutely. I had everything he was talking about. Also fever at the site of injection. I had real soreness. Like I was like,
I had a dream I was the president.
Yeah, that's painful right there.
Well, everybody had that stuff in.
Well, it was a dream that I was the president, and I was like, do they know I'm the president?
See,
I go,
hold on. Let me diagnose that dream.
Well, no. I'll give you
You're a black man living in white society.
No, I asked him.
And you're always having to prove your worth, right?
Well, no.
And those around you
not
validated.
When I was president, I was like, what does that mean I can do? And I go, well, they're like, we can make you anything you want for breakfast. And so
as a black man in your own dream, being president, your most important move was breakfast.
And so I just remember getting up thinking, wow, maybe my wife will make me breakfast. And that's when I knew I came back. So I knew I wasn't president.
Now I did have a few chills. I had a few chills.
Okay.
From the vaccination, but that only lasted an hour. After that, I was good. But so Wednesday I was fine. Thursday I'm great. All that passed. But it was for a minute. I was like, this is painful to an extent. The arm was okay though, but it was a little tender. But anyway, we got it. So the question is what happens when we get the second vaccination?
Well,
on the 15th of March. What's your thoughts?
My testimony, I was good.
Nothing, huh?
All I felt was where the needle violated my holy flesh and went into my body. And that was it. I mean, all I felt like the pain was, oh, I got a shot. I didn't have any other symptoms. Maybe it was like 15 minutes. I remember getting warm at night. I keep my heat on a pretty steady regulated temperature. And I'm like, it's a little hot in here. But that was it. I went to bed. I was fine. Woke up. I was fine the next day.
Well, I mean, I guess we all suffer differently when it comes to the
There
shots.
he is.
And welcome to Representative Jason Crow. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good to be back, everybody. Appreciate it. Sorry, the link wasn't working, but we figured it out.
Yep, not a problem at all. You know, it was somebody's fault here. I don't
Probably
know
on
whose
our
fault it
end.
was.
Somebody's fault.
Yeah.
Whoever it is needs to be fired immediately.
Jaden,
So
I know who it wasn't.
Representative Crow, we were just actually talking about most of us got our first dosage of the vaccination. Have you had a vaccination yet? I don't know.
You did. Yeah. Okay. No, I got the Pfizer. I got the Pfizer vaccine. What did all you get?
We got Moderna.
Moderna. Is that the what? Moderna's the one shot, right?
No, it's two.
That's two. Pfizer. The Johnson & Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
One shot.
That's that Johnson.
Yeah.
So you all, when did you get it? Where did you get it?
So we got it at a place in Denver. It was a cultural center.
Brother Jeff's. Yeah.
Brother Jeff's.
Brother Jeff's. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that was good. It was good. It was packed. People were there.
Good turnout.
It was a good turnout. So we were just talking about the side effects, but the side effects still wouldn't deter me from getting the shot.
Did you have any? Did you all?
Yeah, we all did.
All of us, with the exception of one person.
Hashim.
Had a couple of chills, a little sore arm. Was fatigued on Tuesday. We had a school board meeting on Tuesday, and I was really feeling the fatigue, but had the best sleep I've had in a while, so I was good.
Yeah. Hashim, even if you felt something, would you admit it?
Yes. Yeah, listen,
okay.
You know, as you call me, I'm at what did you say? The compass. The true compass. Like I'm not gonna lie about it, but yeah,
that's true. Yeah. You pretty much speak your truth all the time. So I don't think you would.
It was that Navy strongness that I have.
Wait, did you have any symptoms?
Oh, we're going there. We're gonna go to.
No. Army strong, Navy.
Okay, I gotta. Which means I have to tell this joke. Can you guys?
Okay.
Can I tell a joke?
Of course.
An inter-service rivalry joke, and I say this with extreme affection for all the service members, and with like the Air Force has gotten me out of a lot of stuff. So like I love the Air Force, but I got to tell the joke because it's just so anyhow. So a soldier, a Marine, and an airman are getting together for an inter-service retreat. Right, so they get together and they're all kind of brought together, and the moderator of the retreat says, "All right, I'm going to present a hypothetical to you, and I need you all to answer it." So he goes to the Marine first and says, "All right, this is hypothetical. You walk into your tent, and there's a scorpion on your cot. What do you do?" So the Marine's like, "I ball up my fist, and I smash it, and I crush the scorpion." And he's like, "Okay, all right, that's good. So he goes to the soldier next and says, "All right, Private, what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I take my boot off. I unlace my boot, take my boot off. I aim it methodically at the scorpion, and I throw it, and I knock it, and I knock it off the cot." And the guy's like, "Okay, that sounds good. So he goes to the airman next, and he's like, "All right, airman, what do you do?" And he's like, "Well, I get on the phone and I call the concierge and ask, why is there a tent in my hotel room?"
Valid. My best friend is Air Force, and yes.
My father was in the Air Force too. It's just a different way of life, I guess.
My father was Air Force.
But one service, one fight, though, at the end of the day, as we say. So everybody comes together and gets it done.
Right.
But that's one of my favorites.
So all right, so we got you for a short time. So I guess I was going to turn it over, to Sister Stefania Gallegos, just to kind of kick us off. We're going to try to really ask some questions, stick to the subjects, but not jump around too much, because we just really kind of want to hear what's going on. New administration. This is the first time you've been on since the new administration has taken over, so we know there's some changes coming about. So go for it, Stefania.
So I'm going to take you back, and it's the one question that everyone's been asking you, and you have to repeat the story several times. But back on January 6th, and being part of that, and having to, what were your immediate thoughts when everything started, the ruckus started? What were your immediate thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of in a disbelief. Right? I was up in the gallery. Watching the debate, the certification debate. And at the same time, so those of us who are up in the gallery, there's like 24 of us who are up in the gallery because we weren't scheduled to debate yet. So we were just watching it up there, and we're all spread out because of COVID. And we were watching on the phone. We were watching what started as a protest earlier, and then it came down the mall and turned into a riot, and then they started to clash with police. And then did you watch the speech? I didn't watch the speech, but I was watching the coverage of the protest, and then turned into a riot. And I was literally in the House gallery on my phone, watching in real time as the rioters, the terrorists, were like descending and beating and attacking the police, and they broke through that outer cordon, and then they hit the inner cordon. And at first I thought, well, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, because we were all scheduled just to watch it for an hour. We were in 1 hour blocks. And I had a 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. block, and I was going to go back to my office. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going back to my office because they had totally surrounded everything. But then I started to get really worried because I saw the footage, and I'm like, well, I said, where's the National Guard? Like, where are the forces that we saw last year, right? Because they had guard and they had riot gear. And this obviously is a whole different discussion. They had all these things set up for the protests last year. For the Black Lives Matter protest, but they didn't have it this year. And I remember thinking to myself, there isn't enough people here to hold back this mob.
Did you notice that when you came in? Did you notice that it seemed like it was scaled back?
I did notice that. Yeah, I noticed that because last summer they had pre-positioned riot gear. They had like riot gear stacked up in places around the Capitol for officers to grab it if they needed. None of that was there last month, right? So it was a very different environment. The National Guard wasn't around town, very different. So it became really clear that there weren't enough police and that they weren't going to hold it back. And that's when I started to get worried. Then they broke through the Capitol. And then the next, there were a couple of oh crap moments, although I didn't say crap. There were a couple of moments where I just, the things went off. You're like, this is bad, right? And the first one was when they told us, when they actually evacuated the leadership, and they evacuated the floor, but we were still up in the gallery. The second one was when they told us to get our gas masks out because they were deploying tear gas in the Capitol. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, that's bad. Like that, there's no plan here.
Scarier.
Then the worst moment of all, was after they had evacuated the floor, and there was about still 20 of us in the gallery. And I looked up. This was after we had our gas masks out. I looked up, and they were locking us in. They were locking the doors of the gallery, and then the police were starting to take furniture and barricade the doors with us still in. And that's where I realized we're in trouble, and there's no way out. We were cut off, and that's when I made the decision to call Desiree, tell her that I loved her, and to tell the kids that that I love them. And I hung up the phone, and I kind of did what I did. Got back into like combat mode, ranger mode, as I call it. I just took all my emotions and I just put them in a box. I just set that box aside. And I just started to come up with a mental checklist of everything I needed to do. Check the doors, lock the doors, start communicating with the officers. And I just started to turn my anxiety and my fear into action.
And you were also very instrumental in calming other people.
Yeah, I tried. That's not to say that I wasn't, I didn't have fear myself. I wasn't afraid, wasn't anxious myself. But, my colleagues were there, Susan Weil, that photo that was captured that I didn't realize until hours later that somebody was even taking photos of us. but yeah, everyone, didn't know what to do. So I was kind of trying to comfort folks, and at the same time prepare to fight. I honestly thought we were going to have to fight our way out.
So 2 questions in. You weren't really afraid, meaning that you thought that whoever was there, the police that were barricading you in, were going to be able to handle the situation?
No, I didn't think so. Okay. I knew that it was complete chaos. Everything had broken down. Okay. I mean, there were thousands of rioters, thousands, right? And they just very rapidly overwhelmed the outer perimeter. And there was just a door. I mean, there was just the door. It was just a wooden door with furniture, and they were ramming the door. I mean, we could hear them trying to ram the barricades down, the yelling, the screaming. We heard, the gunshots coming from the gallery. And there was only about, I think, 10 or so officers that were in there with us. And there was a moment where I actually was thinking about asking one of those officers for his gun. Because one of the things that I've learned is that you can never tell. You never know who's actually capable of pulling the trigger when you need to.
Right.
You just never know. Like, I've seen very macho, tough talking guys like just fall apart. Right? In that type of environment. You just never know. You can't train for that. I mean, you can train for it, but you just never know at the end of the day. So I didn't know whether those officers were going to be willing to do what was necessary to save us if we needed to. So I was thinking about asking him for his gun, but I ultimately decided not to, and didn't need to, because the SWAT team was able to get us out.
So this one is going to be a little bit more. I don't know if you want to discuss this or not, but how is your wife dealing with this? Because when I think of you having to make that phone call and her having to receive that phone call, and thinking about 9/11 and those people who got those phone calls who actually didn't get a chance to, receive their loved one home again. Is she okay? How the children, and how is everybody doing?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, Ms. Vania. She's okay. It was, that was obviously a brutal call to receive for the reasons you just described. And then there was a period there, for about a half an hour where I went dark, and she didn't know what was happening. And until I finally got to safety and was able to call her again. She's okay. There was a little bit of a delayed element there because, it was really tough that day and the days immediately after, and then it kind of settled down. But then when the impeachment trial happened and they were showing all that footage, right? They were showing the footage of what was on the other side of that door, what they were chanting and what they were doing, and how they had just, brutally beaten, these cops and everything else. And that kind of reinvigorated it, for both of us, certainly for her, to some extent for me. The kids are doing okay too. I mean, my 7-year-old daughter is a little bit young to kind of fully grapple and understand the whole consequence of it. Anderson, he's 11 now. He just turned 11 last week. And it was harder for him because he reads the news. He understands, he's old enough to understand it. And it's been a little bit more challenging for him, but we're working through it.
Good. Nice. Well, I'm glad you're safe.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
So when it was going down, and I saw you, I saw you flash on MSNBC. I'm like, oh shit. And I screenshot.
You weren't the only one saying that.
And just checking on her or reaching out, that way. And she said you were okay at that point. I don't know where in the timeline it happened or whatever, but I'm glad you're okay, right?
Yeah. I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate you reaching out too, by the way, to Des and to me. That meant a lot. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. For me with that situation, I just couldn't believe they cleared the steps, right? Like understanding of what it is to protect the Capitol from enemy combatant, right? It gets into a whole different type of conversation where you have to start filing down and naming those things that we've spent decades not naming, and not wanting to call out for what they were, white supremacy and insurrection. But so that blew my mind. But anyway, I'm glad you're out of that. My question for you right quick is, who is the better impeachment manager, you Nagoose or Daget?
There is no way I'm answering that question, and you know it.
All right.
Very different case, as you know, extremely different case, different time, different environment. Pre-election, post-election, sitting president, former. Extreme. I don't think it's apples and oranges. It really is. But at the end of the day, Joe and Diana did an amazing job. Yeah, they really did. I mean, they just brought the amazing case. They represented the state. They were compelling. They were clear. They were concise. I mean, the challenge for our case was that we had to describe, very challenging legal issues, like, spending days talking about the Impoundment Control Act and the phone call and why Ukraine is important and how security assistance funds work. Their challenge was different in that there was just so much evidence. You had to figure out how to narrow it down and keep focused, right? Focus the evidence and focus the case. So it was kind of two very different challenges, but Joe and Diana did a remarkable job.
They did. And both of you all proved it beyond preponderance of the evidence and beyond a reasonable doubt, in my opinion. But we know how that played out. So going forward, and, I always would like to bring up the question of what is going to help the marginalized people, and specifically focusing on Black people. Outside of criminal justice reform, what are you working on for the uplift of this community?
Yeah, so one thing I'm really excited about is the economic development, business development work, because one thing, my first term, I was around a lot, doing roundtables, doing listening sessions, and one of the important themes that came up over and over again was we need to develop within our own community, right? Mm-hmm. Things like opportunity zones and things like that are fine, and there's a time and place for outside investment and people to invest in, but really what you need more than anything is you need, your own talent, but we need our own talent and our own people, our own business people and entrepreneurs to get that lift up and to have that level playing field. So what I've done is I've joined, this is a bipartisan and bicameral bill. This is going to be one of the bills I'm going to be pushing the hardest. It's the Next Generation Entrepreneurship Core Act. And I've joined with Troy Balderson, a Republican from Ohio, in the House. On the Senate side, it's Tim Scott and Chris Coons. Really? And what it does is it identifies entrepreneurs in underserved communities, and it does a number of things. It will provide them a salary for 2 years with health care, student loan repayment assistance. It provides them with mentorship. It connects them with mentor business owners, a kind of a group of executives that will help mentor them along and start the business. It actually fast tracks them and gets them special access to outside equity, private equity investment, and just a panoply of wraparound services to start their business in their community and to grow that business. Because I think one of the things we need to do so much better is recognize that we have amazing talent, mm-hmm. we have great people, but we have to lift those folks up. And we have to do so in a very methodical and deliberate way. So the Next Gen Entrepreneurship Core Act will do that with over 300 fellows a year and help promote the economic development. So that's one really important thing that we're working on.
Nice. Thank you very much on that. I just a word of caution, or to look for the devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. When it's promoting this type of growth from communities, understanding how gentrification has impacted Black and Brown communities, it might be like double dipping, or not really double dipping, ignoring the intent of the bill for Black and Brown businesses and Black and Brown community to be able to develop in their business if their area has already been gentrified by people who have better resources and a better understanding of how to navigate those fields, kind of like what happened with the first bailout that we did for COVID-19. You saw all these big businesses, multi-million-dollar corporations grabbing this money, and we saw the failing of a lot of small businesses in these blighted communities where that's targeted to. So
it's a good point. And there's if you have additional feedback on how to identify that, there are two things we have in the bill that are meant to counteract some of that. Nothing is 100%. But one is people who have recently lost businesses get prioritization. So if you've had a business and if they've lost it in the pandemic, then they actually go to the top of the line to get in the fellowship. And the second is it's based on a kind of economic data and need in the community, right? So hopefully that will offset some of the gentrification issues, that if a community is doing well and on the upswing, then those are less the communities that are going to be targeted with this bill. But again, I mean,
Gotcha.
I hear you.
Yeah, and you know, definitely, I don't mind reaching out, being in touch to provide my feedback, whether solicited or unsolicited. And also the other thing to keep in mind, cannabis, as we're approaching for the legalization of cannabis on a federal level, we have to not do like Denver has done and failed not to put those protections in for the groups that were hurt most by the illegalization or the criminalization of the product. It's a money-making opportunity. The people are already set up for the box out move. You know, it's best, as my mom used to tell me growing up, when it came to cleaning up, it's best to do it right the first time than to do a half-ass job, because then you have to go back and do it right the second time.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. And I know you've been very vocal on that for a long time, as making sure that the development within economic development within the cannabis industry is focused on those communities that are hardest hit, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. I have to say goodbye to everyone. I have to step off for another event. Thank you, Congressman, for your time. Dope Black Thoughts. Stay strong. Stay black.
See you, Hashim.
All right. See you.
Gotcha. Yeah. Good to see you.
So, Mr. Carter.
My question, good evening again, Mr. Representative Crow. My question specifically is, you know, you kind of spoke to, you know, being in that chamber on the 6th, and I think some of the stuff that came out during the second impeachment hearing was like the mettle of everyone kind of coming together, both sides coming together, you know, seeing the threat, and there was like, and you used it, there was some bipartisanship. How do you contrast that to 30 days later, and you have people who you literally were in a foxhole with, almost pretending like that didn't even happen? How do you just said that you talked about your program was bipartisanship based. How do you go across the aisle to somebody who refuses to even acknowledge the facts that you both were part of?
That is the ultimate question. I was going to be honest with you. I'm struggling with it. I really am. And I don't have the answer to it right now. It's tough. It's really, really tough, right? Because, you know, the tension for me is, you know, I really believe in this project of trying to like find, you know, tear down walls and tear down this tribalism and these silos and do bipartisan work. You know, in my first term, you know, I was one of the most bipartisan members of Congress. You know, over 2/3 of my bills I introduced alongside with a Republican. And I believe it. You know, I've got, you know, a lot of friends and family members. I grew up in a Republican family. You know, I'm a lot of immediate family. So, you know, I've come to this in really good faith. And I've come to it really wanting to do this work and project. But I am really struggling with reconciling what you just described, right? I'm willing to have debates all day long on like monetary policy and infrastructure and like the best way to you know, address, you know, K through 12 education. I'll have policy debates all day long. But when it comes to an issue that if people are just lying or if they're just pursuing political power, raw political power and self-interest at the detriment of our country, that's hard to work with, right? Like, how do you just set that aside and ignore it and pretend everything's okay, right? Because you have to push back, right? We got to push back so this doesn't become normalized in our debate and our rhetoric. But you also have to do the work. And I also recognize that like what our country needs more than anything is to build trust through work and to get things done and to meet, you know, address our pandemic and address inequality and address all these crises that we have. So it's tough, and I'm kind of working through it right now. I don't have the answer. I think, you know, part of the answer is that we just have to just start doing it, right? I mean, that's not a satisfying answer maybe, but you just have to start doing the work and building trust through progress and building trust through getting things done. And that's what I'm trying to do, but it is tough.
Well, are you ever when you guys are in the cloakroom or just at the gym or wherever, just do you ever, and no names, just have a conversation like, hold on, you saw what I saw. How are we arguing about this? Do you ever have a moment where I don't want to say come to Jesus moment, but like a come to Jesus moment?
No, I do. I do. I mean, because I've developed, because of all the work I did in my first term, I developed a lot of relationships, a lot of friendships with my GOP colleagues, right? And we would be in the gym together. We had this bipartisan workout group that we would work out in the morning and like would go grab a beer, after votes in the evening. And my fellow veterans, I've connected with a lot of veterans on the other side of the aisle. And I've had a lot of those conversations. And it's just like, hey, what's going on here? Like, I know you understand this. I know, you have the mental capacity. You're not, you don't not understand what's going on. So please work me through this. Like, why are you doing this? Because this is so inconsistent with the person that I know. And, I don't always get satisfying answers. I actually, right after the attack on the 6th, I had some pretty candid come to Jesus talks with some of my colleagues. And some of them actually teared up. And said that they're afraid. They're afraid of the Trump extremists. They're afraid of people in their own districts. My response to them, not to be unsympathetic, but I said, well, welcome to the club, right? I've received death threats too, and guess what? We've been warning about that this is going to happen. We've been warning you for a long time, right? Because anybody who's been paying attention can tell you this is the direction things have been moving. Right, this has been building up, and we've been warning you. And I told him that, and some of them admitted, we should have stood up sooner. But still, at the end of the day, and I tell them too, it's like it doesn't matter what you tell me behind closed doors. Like I want to see it publicly, right? I want to see your votes, and I want to see it publicly because it doesn't matter. What the country needs now is visible leadership. They need people standing up, speaking the truth in front of the cameras. In front of people, and correcting the record here. And until that happens, these conspiracy theories, this extremism, everything's going to be kind of running out of control.
My last question, and I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Marcus. That's your view from your position, the 3,000-foot view. You guys have said there to do the people's house, do the people's business. Is anything going to get done?
Well, the answer is yes, it is going to get done. We're going to get this relief bill done. I'm very confident of that.
Oh, good.
Because we have to. And if we're going to do it, if we have to do it by reconciliation, we're going to do it by reconciliation. Because, if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle can use reconciliation to give a tax cut where 84% of the benefits go to the top 1% and to go to corporations, then we can use reconciliation to deliver aid to working families and to people. And to beat a pandemic. That I have no problem with that. And we're going to do it and we're going to get it done. Because at the end of the day, fast forward to June, July, and August, come around the summer. And I haven't had a single person, by the way, in our community ask me, or say, well, I really would rather you not do this via reconciliation or using this budgetary process. They want it done. Right? Like, they want the vaccines to be distributed. They want schools to be reopened. They want our businesses to have support. They want the economic payments, the unemployment extended. They just want it done. And I want it done too. So we're going to get it done.
Thank
you. So I wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit because we're still talking about litigation and whatnot, but now they're looking at suing former president and Giuliani. So I'm wondering, what's your interest in Representative Thompson's lawsuit against those two? Were you interested in helping with that, joining in on that, or the NAACP suit against, trying to disenfranchise, like say the city of Detroit, 78% Black?
Yeah, I am looking at, I haven't had a chance to read the suit and look at it in detail. I mean, I know kind of top line, it's based on the Ku Klux Klan Act, I think of 1871 is the cause of action. Benny Thompson is the primary plaintiff, and they're looking at adding other plaintiffs right now. And Benny, by the way, was in that group with us. He was trapped in the gallery with us that day. So he was right in there with the thick of it. like all of us. So he knows what happened, and he's feeling it too. So I have to look at the lawsuit. Obviously, as a former lawyer, the devil's in the details, and I got to read the brief. But at the same time, I have to ask myself, a couple of questions. Number one, and as I'm reading this, these are the questions I'm going to ask. One is, what would be my role, right? Because I know Benny and others, have a very unique perspective, given who they are, to advance this lawsuit. And I have to ask whether it's right and appropriate for me to insert myself in that process. That's the first question. The second being, what is my oversight role? And I'm focusing right now on the GAO investigation, because there's lots of different accountability things happening, right? We did impeachment, we did the trial, there's criminal FBI investigations going on. There are several agency IG investigations. There's a DOJ IG investigation. There's a DOD IG investigation. The speaker has announced a 9/11 style commission, so that's going to happen. There's going to be these lawsuits. What I'm actually doing, I'm actually leading this in the House side, is the GAO investigation. So I sent a letter and actually initiated the Government Accountability Office investigation of everything leading up to the 6th and what happened on the 6th and the multiple failures. So I'm leading that on the House side. Michael Bennett actually is the Senate leader on the Senate side. Between Michael Bennett and I, we're shepherding it along. So that's going to be my primary focus, because I never want to, try to do too much and then not do it well. So that's my primary focus in terms of accountability, but I am also looking at other efforts out there.
As you're looking at whether those cases are good, do you feel like it might be a stronger case or with more viability coming from the states against number 45?
I don't know. It might be. I mean, obviously all of this has to do with cause of action, right? Like, what's the cause of action and what's the injury, and how do you frame that as the injury? And obviously there's electoral elements to this. The big lie was about the election, and obviously there's the Dominion voting case. So there's a lot of litigation that's already going, and I would imagine a lot more. So again, it's, I guess, an issue of focus, and I just don't know, what other lawsuits there are going to be.
And I like that you said the big lie. I think one of the things that the GOP has done is branding, marketing their communication a little bit better, making it more digestible, speaking in legal terms and talking over to regular working people's heads, because we're not lawyers. I'm a truck driver, for instance. So when we're talking about something, is it true or is it a lie? I think it's good to break that down. I appreciate that you brought that up. I want to kind of talk back about, you brought up COVID, and you say you want to get that done. I consider that better spoken upon as a survival check. I just wanted to say that because people are trying to survive. I got a lot of family in Texas right now that are trying to survive right now. And I think if we can communicate more clearly, and I'm not saying you have an issue with this, but just talking about people on the left end of the spectrum, we communicate more clearly, I think we'll be a lot more successful at being able to reach across that aisle.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, we're just not, we need to have humility in the recognition that, we won this election, which was great and needed to happen. But 47% of voters voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right. After 4 years of this, they said, sounds great, sign me up for more. 47%. Right. We came within 90,000 votes of the GOP, of Donald Trump winning re-election, and the GOP taking control of the Senate and the House. 90,000 votes. So, and if we're being honest with ourselves, I think that honest assessment is we need to do much better at breaking through, because our policies are great. They're really good, and they will help working families and address a lot of issues. But we're not breaking through to folks, and we're not breaking through to a lot of working class folks, right? I grew up in a small business family, a working class family. I worked in construction to pay my way through college. I spent time in the military, like several of you. And so, the better part of the early half of my adult life was in a working class world. And we've got to make sure that we're effectively communicating with people and earning their support, because we haven't been doing it well enough.
Yep. And that's kind of where I wanted to piggyback off of. So I look at our Colorado delegation. we have 6 Democrats and 3 Republicans in office for Colorado. So, and for me, I think that's actually great. That's kind of if you look at between the two, we've lessened and gained in that aspect. So when I think of the Colorado delegation, I guess my question to you is this: of all the Democrats that you got Diane DeGette, you got Joe Neguse, you got yourself, you got Ed Perlmutter, you got John Hickenlooper, you got Michael Bennet. I think that's it. So in terms of the delegation, so do you all have conversations at all? Do you all even get together and actually talk about what can we do to keep this going? Some would say that we lost momentum with this last election in that aspect. Sure, we gained the White House, we gained the Senate, but we gained the Senate essentially by virtue of gaining the White House with obviously Vice President Kamala Harris in play in that aspect as a potential tiebreaker. But have you had conversations with the delegation about how we get that momentum back to where it was just 2 years ago in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean the answer is yes. You know, and you said, Marcus, you said, you know, some would say we lost ground. We just lost ground in the House, period, just by numbers, right? Sure. Like that was not a success for us. You know, we lost a lot of seats. I lost a lot of friends, great public servants in November. And you know, we are holding on to a House majority in Trump districts, right? We have a low single-digit majority in the House. We have, you know, double-digit Trump districts. So that's tough, right? We got to be honest that we're climbing uphill here, and we can't afford to lose. So the answer is yes. I mean, we do have these conversations. Everyone has their different, you know, politics and their different background. You know, I have my perspective is kind of the you know, key swing district in the state, and obviously try to bring that perspective as much as I can, you know, at the national level and the local level in those conversations, and you know, try to, you know, help further the conversation in a productive way, right? So that's why I'm always kind of I'm not shy about expressing my view. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, right? And I express it to anyone who will listen in terms of what we, you know, have to be doing to be doing better.
Well, good. Well, that was the biggest thing for me. Go ahead. Go. Yeah.
Well, you brought up the Colorado delegation. You know, we were talking about sitting around having a few drinks. There's a couple of members of the Colorado delegation. Wondering if you've been hanging out with them, specifically one from the Western Slope. Do you guys sit down and have any conversations? Do you even talk to her as like a fellow Coloradan, part of the Colorado delegation?
Bobert.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, he said
it. Bobert.
Yeah, no, it's no secret that I don't see eye to eye with Miss Bobert. I mean, that is you know, that is pretty clear, and I'm not shy about letting that be known, right? Because I feel like this goes to my earlier point. You know, we're in this moment in time in America where you just can't be quiet when there are people saying egregious things or assaulting our community or our values, or because, you know, if you're quiet, if you let that go unanswered, it has an impact, right? Because then it becomes okay, and it builds up over time, and it becomes normalized, and people are like, well, that's okay, because it just happens. Well, it's not okay, and it shouldn't just happen. And I think we got to push back, but there is also a balance there, because you can't just always be swinging at every pitch, right? Because I have my own agenda, I have my own issues that I need to talk about, and I want to talk about. So, you know, pushing back when you need to, but not all the time, and just staying focused on your main goals, I think, is the key. But, you know, I have had a few conversations with Ms. Bobert, and I have a rule that I don't talk about my private discussions with other members, sure, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or close friends, because, you know, what that rule allows me to do is actually have candid conversations with folks, and have a connection with people, and try to work things out if we can. So I don't break that rule.
Fair enough. So let me ask this question. She did present a bill to block the Paris Climate Accord, the Paris Accord. Does that bill have any traction at all in the House?
No.
Okay. I just was curious. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, it doesn't. And to Kevin's earlier point of being better on messaging, I don't know what she has against economic development for her community.
yes.
Right. Like, why is she trying to prevent, one of the biggest growth industries in the country, in the world, the renewable energy sector, from being successful and giving jobs to her constituents? I would think she would be interested in providing jobs and growing businesses, not preventing job growth. But, we could talk about that for a while.
Representative Boebert, stop killing jobs.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, and she also presented a bill to defund the World Health Organization as well. I'm just curious, what from her background has her presenting bills like this, instead of really trying to just get your foundation going and figure out what your community needs, what your congressional district needs, and start presenting things of that nature. I guess that's
Marcus, it's because you're thinking about things as a leader, right?
Qualities.
Listen, there's this whole group of people. We're in this era right now where there's a group of people who are interested in the drama and the political stunts and the attention, right? That kind of live online, right? And they live for the Facebook likes. They live, for the media attention. And if that's what you're focused on, then all you're doing is trying to do stunt after stunt or egregious thing after egregious thing to keep that attention flowing, right?
We call them pain whores.
Or clout chasers.
There you go.
Clout chasers, yeah. And and obviously that's not a way to get things done. Is you can't deliver for your constituents that way. And I think folks will see that over time.
The last thing he said, delivering for your constituent. You would assume, and this is just me being rational, that we would vote for someone who could go to the people's house and deliver for the constituents. However, it appears that is not how everyone's thinking. They're sending someone who has no power, no agenda, and I don't understand it.
Yeah. I don't really understand. I don't understand either. But I think, I don't know, my response to that would be one of the lessons we've learned the last couple of years is how powerful tribalism is in identity.
Yes.
That people will vote against their self-interest.
Oh, goodness.
Yep.
In very, very harmful ways for their family and community.
Yes.
Because, the power of identity and belonging and kind of this cultural warfare is very, very strong, right? It has a very strong pull.
Kentucky, Mitch McConnell. Can't get him out of there, right?
And he's not popular, but the policies and I've studied the policies that he's presented have not been helpful.
No.
At least not helpful for the other 90% of the state, but helpful to that upper top 10%.
With the poorest state in the union. Am I wrong? I believe
it's one of them.
It's one of the poorest states in the union.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So when you're talking about, I think of Representative Boebert. I think about the censure of Marjorie Taylor Greene. We talked about that on another show, and it brings up a question that we kind of talked about together as we were formulating questions for this. And I believe Sister Gallegos came up with this one, which was, how do you, after this election, number 45 is still moving forward with the big lie, right? How do we protect our democracy? And I'm just quoting verbatim from what she wrote. How do we protect our democracy from this sort of dangerous rhetoric? And I added in this part, without trampling on the First Amendment, because I know there's a balance that has to be made, but it's getting really bad out there. Because right now, my relatives are finding power, searching for food, and trying to find heat right now, and they're being told that it's because the wind turbines froze.
Yeah, it's the Green New Deal's fault. Yeah,
the Green New Deal that has not been adopted.
Yeah, and Governor Abbott's party's been in power for 20 years in that state. So, that's and then therein lies the real challenge, right? So there are so many things going on here, in my view, right? You have you have the structural challenges to democracy, right? You have gerrymandering, you have the corrosive impact of big money in politics, which have kind of corrupted and corroded, the way our democracy is structured to work at the electoral level. Voter disenfranchisement is another really big one. Then you have the economic anxiety, right? Because you think about the fact that there is all of this. Some of what's fueling this Trumpism is this economic anxiety of people being left behind, right? I mean, the American dream is just out of reach for vast swaths of America now, and people are rightfully upset about it. I'm upset about it. So that's feeling it. Then you have the racism and the bigotry and the misogyny element to it that's driving certain elements. Then you have on top of that the social media, right? The algorithms and the impact of social media and how that drives the extremes and creates echo chambers. And then you lay over top of all of that a pandemic that's creating crisis. And it's really a perfect storm, right? For all of this to come together. So we've got to get through the pandemic, right? That's our immediate issue, and we got to start rebuilding and the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and the closure of businesses. You mentioned rightfully, Kevin, this issue of First Amendment, right? Because there was this short-term response of deplatforming Donald Trump and cutting off the Twitter and cutting off the servers of Parler and other things like that. That was a short-term solution. That was a short-term solution because we have a domestic terror threat and a radicalized white supremacist and white nationalist movement that actually presents both a immediate short-term threat and a longer-term threat that we have to deal with. But cutting off access to those platforms is not the long-term answer, right? Because it just increases the echo chambers, right? People will find a way to communicate, and it's going to create the echo chambers. So we have to figure out how we can create. This is a legislative challenge, but also a regulatory one with the FCC. How we can create some rules of the road to govern, these new platforms that are really the modern, town square and town hall, where communication has to happen, and we have to provide outlet, but also prevent some safeguards so people don't incite violence, people aren't threatening people's lives, furthering extremist movements. We have to figure out how we do that. It's not going to be
the basic level of false dissemination of information.
Yeah.
It used to be a time that the news was controlled, and if it was incorrect, they had to print a piece that said, this part was incorrect, we can't put this out there.
That was raised from the Reagan era.
And it's such a polar difference from when we watch things like OAN and MSNBC. They're so different.
How do you get the general populace not to listen to ridiculousness? How do we educate the general populace from listening to ridiculousness?
But also, how do you keep them from ignoring true things, such as Charlottesville? There was high definition footage with digital audio of people chanting with tiki torches saying, "Jews will not replace us." Eventually the story became, no, it was you will not replace us. Oh no, I heard it crystal clear. They said Jews. And then they ran over Heather Heyer, right? And then they're like, oh, well, it's the same thing as a Black Lives Matter rally. I'm sorry, no Black Lives Matter people ran over anyone. It just wasn't happening. So they weren't chanting that white people won't replace us. They were saying our lives and our children matter. I don't know how you make people pay attention to true and important things and ignore false and falsehoods.
It's so tough. And Stefania, to your point, it's interesting because we have to recognize that this technology, these platforms have given access to folks, has given people a voice. Like, this show wouldn't have been happening a decade ago, right? Like,
That's right.
Like you wouldn't have been able to break through and get access to those few media outlets that were controlling that. So that's a positive, right? And it's given voice to folks. But obviously, no reaction goes without an equal and opposite reaction, right? Like there's the negative side to it too. So it's a constant push and pull. That's tough.
Yeah, but like I said, when you're putting false information out there, of course, during Trump's campaign, him labeling things fake news didn't help, this position. But when you're putting false information out there, like I said, there was a time when you had to go, if you were real media. Now, gossip columnists can write whatever they want, but if you were, true journalists, you had to be accurate. There were journalists that were fired for misinformation. We don't have that anymore.
Right. There's no filter. There's no editorial check on any of it. People say anything they want, and then we get these. Yeah.
And even when you're being fact checked in real time, there's still no repercussion.
Fired from Fox for calling Arizona.
Yeah. That's right.
Telling the truth.
He called Arizona. He called the.
They said it was too early. He was right, but so speaking of Fox, have you been on Fox News? Would you go on an interview on Fox?
No, I would. I was on. I do conservative stuff. So I've been actually I went on Stephen Tubbs' show yesterday. As a matter of fact.
Okay.
Because I believe that. If we have values and we feel things, that we have to say them. We can't just say them to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to go where people disagree with you, and you got to make your case.
Right.
You can't shy away from that. So I would do that, and I would do Fox too. I mean, they haven't asked me recently, but I'd have no.
I agree with you. It just came to my mind. I don't remember seeing that you did an interview, because I know there's certain portions of my friends on Facebook that would say, "How dare you normalize that or give their use a platform?" And then there's people on the other side of it that would say, "Absolutely, go over there and shoot down all of their bad ideas."
Well, he's not just the congressman for Democrats in his district. He's a congressman for everybody in his district. And his job is to go out and spread his message to everybody in his district. So
right. And we can't
100%. I represent them all, and they all deserve to know where I stand and ask me tough questions. There's no doubt about that.
I know you're serious about that, because I know there was especially one gentleman in particular, I'm not going to say his name, that was showing up to your first events at your office, who was combative to your ideas, disagreed with you vehemently, and you allowed that person to speak every time they came. You answered their questions. You sent staff to go and try to, quench his thirst for being heard and understood. So I know that's a true thing. He's saying, not just all politicians have a silver tongue. We hear that too.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, one thing that it's interesting that if I look at the humanity behind people, I always remind myself, you have no idea. Nobody ever has any idea what's behind that interaction. Somebody might come to you, they're pissed off, they're upset, they're angry, they're fearful. There's something driving that, right? There's something behind that emotion. And I don't know whether it's, they just lost a job, they're getting evicted from their home, they just lost a loved one, they're afraid, they maybe got diagnosed with cancer. I don't know what they're dealing with, but they've had a lifetime of experience that has brought them to that moment that's driving that emotion. And I have to listen to it, and I have to try to meet people where they are. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to put up with abuse, right? I don't put up with abuse or threats or violence. That's a different issue, and I don't tolerate that. But people being heated and emotional, I mean, that's part of the job, and you have an obligation to try to meet people where they are and see what's behind that.
So we are coming to the end of the show. We just want to be respectful of your time, but also those who watch and those who tune in afterwards. But I just wanted to say, number one, thank you for popping on to the show again. For at least for us three, we live in CD6, we live in your district. So for us, it's important to kind of hear from you and kind of hear what's going on. But, you are our connection to, if you will, what's going on out there in those bills. I want to say thank you for sharing that firsthand account. It's always, it's just different hearing the firsthand account. You get everyone's opinion outside. Well, this is what I saw, but actually living through it, it's not anything that, not any of us can quite frankly discuss or describe. And so, but having to call your wife, because I didn't know that. But, you know, as I sit here and think about it, absolutely, that's one of the first things I would do as well, because you don't know. So I thank you for, you know, for opening up and sharing that with us as well. Anything else from the group before we
give us a dope black thought?
Well, you know, there's one other thing that I think it was important to mention. It didn't come in the conversation, and I should have talked about it earlier when Stefania asked me what was going through my mind, what I was thinking. This is a really important takeaway for me. Then something that I'm still thinking about. You know, when I was sitting there, we were taking shelter and we didn't know what was going to happen. That was the first time in my life that I had been on the receiving end of the violence of racism and white supremacy in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, you know, a very large percentage of those rioters, of that mob, were white supremacists. They were carrying the symbols. That's what they were there for. I had never been on the receiving end of that violence before. And so what I'm not trying to say, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to draw any type of false equivalency here or say that my experience was equivalent in any way to what it's like to experience that every day for some folks in America. But for a very brief moment of time, I got a glimpse of what that looks like. And that was humbling for me. It really was. And, you know, I've kind of, you know, I've tried to understand it, you know, as a leader in a mental sense, like in a logical sense before, and tried to lead on this issue, but never have I experienced it really in a visceral, kind of soulful sense before. So what I'm going to try to do is take that experience and be better, right? And try to lead better, to be more proactive, to lean in on these issues, to be a better advocate and ally, and then just speak out on these issues in a more effective and more robust way. I just want you all to know that, and I you know, want to have a conversation, kind of an ongoing conversation with you and other community leaders on how I can be a better leader and friend and ally here going forward.
That's amazing that you say that, because what brought to my mind, and this was a while back, but I know they made you all take off your pens to say that you weren't part of the Senate or the Congress or anything, but I don't think, and I'm not trying to say that anyone that was part of the insurrection was ignorant or anything like that, but I really don't think if something were to happen and they got all the way in there to all of you, they wouldn't have been able to say which one was a Democrat or which one was a Republican. Right. So everybody's life was in danger. It's amazing that you could not get the GOP to understand that no one could have made that distinction once they were in there, and everyone's life was truly in danger in that during that impeachment process.
The pen thing. I mean, that was actually I'm glad you raised the pen one, Stefania, because I was one of the people that was asking people to take off their pens as I was trying to figure out what we had to do. And then after the fact, so like Lisa Blunt Rochester from Delaware was up there with us. Pramila Jayapal was stuck up there with us. And afterwards, you know, we were having a lot of conversations with you know, just kind of recounting it, you know, sharing our emotional around it. And I think it was Lisa had said, well, I knew what you were trying to achieve, and that was the right thing. But I was also thinking to myself, like, I got to keep this pen in my hand. I'm going to take it off, and I'm keeping my hand, because how are the people that are going to come and help us know who to help as well? And that was just such an amazing moment. It's like, I didn't think of that, right? Because I haven't had to think of that before. But you know, she shared with me, and I actually apologized to her, and she's like, you didn't need to apologize. I'm like, sorry, I didn't mean to, wasn't trying to make you feel uncomfortable. I was just trying to help and go through a checklist of the things that I thought that we had to do to defend ourselves. Right. And she's like, no, I knew this, what you were trying to do. She's just like, my life though, I just have to think about things differently. And that was a really interesting conversation, and just that was a growth experience for me, for sure.
You even said it. In my life though, I had to think about things different. That's a dope black thought right there. Oh, no. Yeah. I'm serious. That's a black thought that is thought by black people every single day when we have these conversations with our non-black counterparts. that are meaning well and are productive and leaders and, you know, in faith and industry and politics as well. It's still like, if you haven't had this one right here, you don't understand that I have to think different sometimes.
And that was it. But the fact that you had to live through that and be at the point, if you will, be at the spear's point of dealing with that, as many of us have in different respects, that speaks volumes. And that speaks volumes. So, and your words mean a lot when you say that, yeah, you're going to do better. There's no other way to put it. So with that, I just have to say thank you very much, Representative Crow, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
It's always an honor to have you here. And we appreciate you being a friend of the show. No doubt about it.
Yes.
Thank you. No, I always enjoy it. Thanks for the invitation and look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Great evening.
Thanks all.
Out there,
be well.
Have a good evening,
Take
everyone.
Take care.
Okay. Yeah, bye.
Thanks, sir.
What is love? It's a drug. Let it rotate, then get back in it. Calling me an Uber just to get back to you. Hit the gas shot like fate, I send it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it. If I didn't gravitate, taste that wet emoji got me higher out of space.